We are back on Air with Rare, but y'all already know before we start this episode, make sure you are following us on YouTube and Instagram at Rare Footage Sports. And to keep up with the number one source for sports, follow us on X at Rare Footage News. Now, today, we got a special guest, my former college teammate, been coaching for a very long time at every level, had a lot of success in his career. With no further ado, Coppin State women's head basketball coach, Darrell Mosley. What's going on, Mose?
What's up, Rare? What's up, man? What's going on, my brother?
All is well, man. I appreciate you taking time out your morning to be on air with Rare, man. Let's get into it, man. You was an assistant at Lincoln for 5 years,
Mhm.
and then you became the women's head coach at Lincoln. You were there for 6 years, and then you were assistant for a year at Delaware, and then you moved on to Arizona State, I believe. You was assistant, and then a year later you were promoted to be the associate head coach, and now you are the head coach of Coppin State women's basketball. You have over 15 years of experience coaching on the college level. What made you want to get into coaching?
Man, it definitely has been a journey. I decided to get into coaching because honestly, I had to be, real with myself. With my playing career. I went Division 1 coming out of high school. Didn't really like the playing time I was getting, my situation at the Division 1 level. So back then, we didn't have the transfer portal where, back then if you transfer, you had to sit for an entire year. And I just, I wanted a bigger role. I wanted to go somewhere and make an impact right away. And so I ended up transferring down to Division 2, and I had the opportunity to play right away, but then that's kind of when it clicked for me that I'm done chasing a hoop dream. I was more passionate about helping other people chase their dreams, whether it was on or off the court. My junior year of college is when that leadership stepped up with me, and I was holding guys accountable on my team, pushing them to get in the gym, get extra shots up. I wanted to be a sports agent, but after doing research, it was kind of like you had to go to law school for 2 years before you can get into that field. And it was like, man, I'm just ready to get right into my field of work. And so that's when kind of coaching came into play, and I was able to get started, as soon as I got done and graduated college.
Now, you started your college coaching career where you played at Lincoln. What was it like going from a player to being on the sideline as a coach?
Man, it was rough, honestly, the first couple of years because, guys that I end up coaching, I was on the team with. So we went to parties together, we hung out, we stayed in the same apartment. So it was kind of like that transition of just looking at me as a coach and earning their respect as a coach, then somebody that was just kind of, playing alongside them. And so where I got that confidence and earned their trust from was I had to come back to college for additional semester of academics because I transferred. I lost roughly 8 to 9 credits. And so when I came back for that additional semester, we were going through a coaching change. And so before the coach was even hired at Lincoln, I was the guy getting the guys up on the team early in the morning, getting them in the weight room, doing skill work. And so the guys trusted me. They responded well to me, and I was pushing them. And so when they did make that hire, and finally hired someone as the head coach, I went and met with the head coach, and he was from the South, and he didn't know me from a can of paint. And so he was kind of like, young man, I'm going to end up bringing in my own staff. One thing about this business is loyalty and trust, and I want to have people around me that I know. And so understandable, but me being a young guy still in the business, just trying to get my foot in the door, it was kind of a blow to me because it was like, I loved it at Lincoln. I'm about to be a future an alum, and so I want to come back and be able to give back to my university. And so I thought my calling wasn't going to be there at Lincoln. I ended up walking back to my dorm that night a little upset, and the guys on the team was like, Coach, what time we going tomorrow? And so, that text, changed my whole career because I could have literally said the new coach said, he don't want me around. He's bringing in his own new staff. But I responded to the guys and said same time tomorrow. And so, by the grace of God, that very next day, the athletic director is walking around with the new head coach, and they were doing like a facility tour. And I was already in the gym with the guys. And so, I went to look back over my shoulder. The athletic director and the head coach is sitting in the bleachers watching the workout. And so I picked up the
Mm.
intensity a little bit. I started getting after it. And after the workout was over, I grabbed my gear, packed it all up in my bag, and I went to walk out. And the head coach called me over, said, "Young man, just from your work ethic, I told you not to come in here no more, or basically I didn't need you, and you still decided to show up. So that shows that you're passionate about the game, that you're hungry about this, and you had a really good workout, and the guys responded to you very well. And so, hey, let's grab some, lunch tomorrow, and the rest was history from there."
Mm. Now you spent 5 years on the men's side and then eventually became the women's head basketball coach.
Yep.
What made you want to switch to the women's side?
Well, I honestly, never even thought about it. Honestly, it was just me putting the work in, grinding. When I first started at Lincoln, I was sleeping on the floor the first 2 years, and it was just like not getting
Mm,
paid. A lot of coaches now think, they're just gonna walk into a situation and people are gonna be able to hand you a check. And so it was something I was hungry about, and I just wanted to put the work in and put the effort in. But just freshly finishing college, no car, no money, thank God for my parents being very supportive and kind of supporting my dream. But I was living like an hour and a half away from home, so I literally was staying with some of the football coaches from the school on their floor in their studio, like living on a mattress. And so my head coach kind of had to go that way to get to work, and he would pick me up in the morning, and that's how I got to the office. And so just putting
mm,
my work in over the years, we're recruiting, high level kids from local. They're getting all rookie team, they're getting all conference. We end up winning the regular season conference. The women's program was trending at the same time, and their coach had left and took a Division I job. But those players kind of was evaluating me over the course of those years, watching the men's program grow and get better over the years. And literally one day, four players showed up at my office, and they were like, "Coach Mosley, can we talk to you for a second?" I said, "Yeah, come on in." And they said, "Coach, we've been watching how you respond to your players, how you push them, how you develop them, how you motivate them. You guys are winning. Your players are getting all conference. We want that in the coach as well." And so
mm,
I said, "Did y'all go meet with the athletic director? Go let him know what you guys are looking for, in a coach, and so that way you guys can be on the committee. Y'all can help with the interview process and find y'all a coach." They said, "No, Coach Mosley, we want you to be our coach." And I'm like, "Oh,
mm.
whoa! I never even thought about it, but it made me scratch my head a little bit." And I went home and talked to my parents about it. The next day, I talked to the head coach, like, "Hey, man, the players came in my office, the women's basketball players came in my office yesterday. How would you feel if, I applied for the job?" And he was like, "Man, we got it rolling right now. We got a lot going for us." But he said, "Man, we accomplished so much." He said, "Man, put your name in the hat. The worst thing they can say is no." And so I ended up applying for the job, and it was kind of weird because it was like, I came to work there every day already. He said, but one day I had to come in a suit and go meet, some of the people that I work with every day. And so, killed the interview. I knew everything about the landscape of Lincoln, and 170 applicants for the job. I thought I had no chance in hell to get that job, and I ended up getting the nod. And so,
Mm.
we end up, getting the opportunity and ended up taking the program to new heights. And yeah, the rest was history from that, point of view for as Lincoln.
Yeah, you spoke on, like the grind of being a college coach. A lot of people don't really understand that grind. My
Uh,
brother is a coach and he tell me all the time, like people think it's just go to practice, go to game and it's over. But really
yeah,
it's a 365-day, 24-hour job. You got players calling you for this,
yep.
players calling you for that. If you're not a head coach, you got the head coach saying you need to be here or do this. And it's a lot of sacrifices that come with being a coach, missing Christmases and missing Thanksgivings and things of that nature. Like people don't understand. It's not just I'm a college coach and I'm rich, but on the outside looking in, some people think it's that easy, but it's really not.
Man, it's definitely a grind. You hit it right on the nose. It's no days off as a coach. Your players are calling, your staff is calling. You're developing your staff, you're developing your players. You got to watch film. With your players, you got to watch film with your staff. And just an example, now I'm starting fresh with a brand new team, 14 new individuals, but also a brand new coaching staff that's been on different staffs, learned differently from other coaches. But I have to teach and implement everything that I need them to be able to incorporate and teach to the team. So terminology is different, spacing is different, wording is different. Just how you defend is different, how you watch film is different. So I'm also, educate myself again because, I've been out of that head seat for 4 to 5 years now. So now I'm trying to get my swagger back and get, go back and watch some of my old film and go through my playbooks and folders and stuff as well to see, what I want to implement, to my program and based off of what our personnel is. And so, but you always constantly recruiting. You got to be on the phone with your future recruits because if they're not hearing from you, they're not coming to play for you. So it's always something to do as a coach if you want to be successful at it.
Now, after 6 years at Lincoln, you get to hire as an assistant at the University of Delaware. Was it a
Yeah.
big difference going from the D2 level up to the Division 1 level?
Honestly, I don't think it was no difference. And a lot of people think it's harder to go up Division 1. I honestly thought it was easier. Because at the Division
Mm,
two level, especially HBCU level, you have to do so much as a head coach, assistant coach. We don't have all the resources and staff. So at Lincoln, it was no job too big or small for me. I was doing laundry. I was, delivering lunches. I was driving vans. I'm doing compliance. I'm doing care logs. I'm doing budget. I'm doing equipment. And so you actually learn so much more at that level. As when you go Division 1, you got somebody for every different job, and so you just got to master that role. But my biggest thing was being accepted. I kind of struggled with that early on. Like, man, they're having success. They are Division 1 athletes. But then also for me, it was kind of like a chip on my shoulder as well because I had success, like actually defeating Division 1 schools over the course of 3 years in a row. And I was
mm,
getting calls for interviews. I was a finalist for several jobs, and just some of the search firms, some of the administrators were saying, we just want to see, Division 1 experience on your resume. And I'm like, what's Division 1 experience? When I'm defeating Division 1 teams. And so it
right.
was just a box I had to check where I moved up. And the biggest thing was just getting adjusted to the team, like, earning their trust. And the biggest thing and the biggest way was to get them in the lab, get them in the gym. And once they feel like, all right, coach knows this stuff, I feel like I'm getting better. It kind of was a trickle effect. And I started with the top player on the team, Jasmine Dickey, who got drafted to the WNBA. Once I had her consistently coming in the gym, working on her game, she's seeing her shot fall. The rest of the team was like, coach, when can we lock in? When can we get in the lab?
The first time I seen Jasmine was it might have been the CAA championship at Drexel. I didn't even know it was like pros on that level. When I seen her, I said, "Yeah, that's what a pro look like."
Her work ethic was different, man. But she was a leader. We were getting up 6 a.m. in the morning. She wanted to stay after practice, but she wanted to be able to provide for her family. She was hungry about it. She studied her film, but she was somebody I could really say put the work in, and she delivered. Especially when we went to the tournament and played Maryland. I think she was kind of still borderline, with the scouts. And they said we want to see her play against better competition, and she put a 30 ball up on Maryland in the NCAA tournament.
Mm.
Stock skyrocketed from there.
So you spent the year in Delaware, and then
Yep.
you get to hire across the country, all the way across the country at Arizona State. How
Yep.
big of a change was that for you, going from CAA to the Big 12, and just leaving the East Coast, going out west?
Man, it was a big adjustment, but it was kind of like, man, this is what you prayed for, man. You never, in my wildest dreams, a kid from Chester, PA, to say, man, I'm coaching at the Power 5 level. This is what you see on TV. This is what you see on ESPN. These are some of the coaches that you see when you out recruiting, and you just like, man, that's that coach right there. And so, my coach, Coach Adair, FaceTime me, and she was hot at the time, and she had about 5 to 6, Power 5 jobs calling for her after we won a championship. And so she FaceTime me, was like, I got 3 offers on the table, and I want you to come, be my top assistant. So see, when I was at
Mm,
Delaware, I was a second assistant, so that was kind of adjustment as well, like leaving a head job, not even going to the top assistant, but it was kind of like, you got to check this box, you got to get this experience. I'm going to go work with a great staff, and so like I said, I bet on myself. But now it was like, I want you to come to Arizona State. I want you to be the top dog. I want you to be my right hand. So I'm like, hold up. And at the same time, those some of those smaller Division 1 schools started calling again, but it was kind of like, I got my Division 1 experience, so I just want a chip. Now they coming back to the table, but it was like, this is Power 5, this small Division 1 head. Let me go see what this Power 5 is all about. And I said, man, with this on my resume, what can they say now? And so, no kids. So it was, the biggest thing was just being away from my family. But it was kind of like, once I went and visited Arizona, beautiful place. The family came out there. They was like, we'd be coming all the time. It was just a destination place, a vacation place, and I really enjoyed my experience there.
What was it like that first Arizona State versus Arizona game? Like, what was that atmosphere like?
Man, they big time rivalry, and it was a tough transition for us, honestly, and it ended up in a tough tenure overall. A lot of people don't know the behinds that kind of transpired with that move. So the athletic director that hired us, literally resigned 4 months after we took that job, and it was just like,
Mm,
man, everything was downhill from there, as far as just resources and support, from the person that made that hire. And so we just kind of had to roll our sleeves up, put our hard hats on, and try to figure it out on our own. But at that level, you got to have rev share, you got to have collective, you got to have support, and we just didn't have it. And so that rivalry, though, man, it's just like you couldn't even wear red on campus. You couldn't mention their name. So it was kind of like the school down south, you had to say, or them down there. It was just like no red. If you wore
mm,
red on campus, you would get called out. And so
yeah.
unbelievable, atmosphere at the games, and we played them there and at our place. And probably was one of the most sold out packed games at both places, but definitely a great rivalry and a great opportunity that I experienced.
Fast forward to now, you're the head basketball coach at Coppin State. How do you like Baltimore, and how beautiful is the campus of Coppin State?
Man, we had probably the best arena in the conference, and a lot of mid major schools. Beautiful facility. I love our gym. It's a great a gym to be able to sell when you bring recruits in. They even say, "Oh my God, I didn't know this place was this big and this beautiful." Same as our weight room, and so it's a hidden gem, honestly. Rare. You get on campus, it definitely you could sell it against other, surrounding universities as well. But great leadership from the top, and President Jenkins and our athletic director Derek Carter. They're the ones behind the driving force of this institution, trying to instill things that we can bring model student citizens here. But just Baltimore has been phenomenal. Just a lot of outreach and outpour. I even got a shout out from the cast of The Wire, and so they showed me love. When
Mm,
I got hired, I had the news
that's
come
good.
out and did some articles and some write ups on me as well. But just the campus outreach and outpour, people just stopping by the office, just welcome me, and the campus and the student body has just been phenomenal. And they're actually helping. I get recruits on campus, and they're like, "Coach, is this another one? This is the place to be. Y'all need to come and get with Coach
Mm,
Mosley." So just loving the support of campus and the community. A lot of great places to get out and eat, and just going down by the harbor as well has been just been phenomenal thus far.
that's what I was great segue into. I don't know if you eat seafood or not, but if you do,
Oh,
have you had a chance to eat Moe's seafood yet?
oh my God! It just brung it up last week. I heard all about it, and so it's on my to-do list. I heard their crab cake is phenomenal, so
Yes,
gotta go check
100%.
out. Gotta go check out Moe's. That's on the. I might do it this weekend now.
Yes, yes. So what type of players do you look for when you are recruiting?
Man, impact. Who's the people that's making plays, who's bringing energy, who's communicating, with their teammates and their coaches. But love two-way players. But and I'm a defensive-minded coach, even though I love players that can score the ball. I love that grit and toughness that's going to be out there taking charges, picking up full court, diving on loose balls.
That's not a surprise. You was a defensive player,
I
man. You was
was
one of the
I
best
was a
defensive players
defensive
on that
specialist,
level.
man.
Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. So, I love to see that and be able to teach, some of my secrets, when I used to be a defender, just kind of how you wait on them, that spin move, just keeping your hand in that pocket. But when I see those type of players that have it, but just that toughness that I'm not afraid, I'm in your face and I dare you try to make that move on me. But then they get the ball in their hands, they have confidence, they have a command of the ball, but they can take ownership on the court. Point guards that can run their team. versatility, two-way players that can play multiple positions and versatile on the court as well. So, and then the high character. I don't need players talking back to their coach and to the referees. So I'm looking at all that, when I'm evaluating.
Now, you down in Baltimore building something new, something of your own. What are some short and long-term goals you have for your program?
Shortest right now is just kind of with it bringing 14 new is just kind of get this team caught up to speed. I think we're behind right now with the hiring of Meek a little late, and then kind of have to get a staff put in place. Then had to kind of pick and choose, what was left available, you know, late April. The portal was already, coming to a close. A lot of the high school seniors were signed, and so we're literally taking, pieces that were left available, and so now we got to develop. We got to do a lot of teaching, a lot of watching film, and so. A lot of people were looking at our schedule and like, man, how you gonna be able to compete in that? And so just really, just beefing our team up in the weight room, getting them stronger, building that mental confidence, watching a lot of film, and we want to still be able to compete this year. I don't want to look at this year as a rebuild or we don't have enough. We're coming in and we're punching the clock every day as if we are enough, as long as everybody can be at a 10 each and every day. And the long term is kind of looking forward and building a lot of relationships and going out and being able to bring those top recruits that want a big role and that want to play at a high level, because we're going to play some tough competition outside of our league. I'm a coach that's not afraid to play against some of the big wigs, and so you got an opportunity to play some of them teams with me. So future looking forward is kind of putting a top program together where we not only competing in our league but competing nationally.
Now, coach, before I let you go, I know you got a busy day ahead of you. When I like for the coaches to drop a jewel on the kids and the parents who are looking to become collegiate athletes or parents of collegiate athletes, what does it take to become a successful Division One player?
Well, the player has to want it, for themselves. It's not something that the parent can want for their kid, or, want to live through their kid, through their hoop dreams they didn't have, or mistakes that they made. You will know if your kid loves the game, if they're watching it, they're studying it, they want to get up in the morning and work out on their own. And as a parent, you're there to guide them, assist them, to be there rebounding and financially, being able to, pay for some of these camps, clinics, AAU and stuff as well. But when you gotta, pull your son and daughter out the bed and constantly wake them up in the morning, then they don't really want it. And so I think as a parent, just being there support, if it's basketball, if it's not basketball, if it's something else, just be there support. And when you're at the games, don't be overly just embarrassing them. Don't be calling out the coach if they're not playing as much. They have to get better. No coach in the country is not going to play your son or daughter if they're going to help them win. And so something's going wrong in that practice, or your child is not working to their maximum capability. So they got to continue to push harder. And as a parent, if coach ain't paying you, that means you got more work to do. And so kind of be that reflection or additional voice as if you were their coach as well, and continue to get your child up, and they got to grind and they got to work so they can be evaluated at the next level and get a scholarship. And now they're giving out money, and so it's a business now.
The
It's a
game show. Yep.
business, and it starts at a young age. And as a parent as well, if you know that kid it has potential, keep them grounded, keep them out of trouble, keep them doing positive things on social media, because us coaches are evaluating all that as well. So just be that positive example as a parent, and check on your kids' social media, checking their phones, and make sure they ain't doing nothing crazy, because one mistake can cost them that scholarship or that opportunity, from making a name for themselves.
Well, my guy, my brother, former teammate, I appreciate you for being on Air with Rare. And I hope you guys have an amazing season down at Coppin State. And, I appreciate the support and I'm proud of you. And I look forward. And I'm going to catch a game this season. I don't know which one, but I'm going to get down there to catch a game, maybe two.
Well, up, man. I appreciate you for having me, man. It's an awesome platform you got, man. Just sharing awareness to the women's basketball game, man. I appreciate you. I'll take my hat off to you, my brother.
Appreciate you, my guy. Talk to you soon.
All right, talk to you.